100 eggs at a time, and they have no natural predators in the Florida Everglades.
This is the story of how the United States government decided that the best way to fight 250,000 Burmese pythons invading the Florida Everglades was to stuff dead mice with Tylenol and drop them from helicopters. And the strangest part? It actually works. Right now, somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 Burmese pythons, Python bivitatus, are slithering through the Florida Everglades. Some estimates put that number above 500,000. These aren't small garden snakes. These are apex predators stretching up to 19 feet long, weighing over 200 pounds, and laying up to 122 eggs in a single breeding cycle. They've devoured nearly every small mammal in sight, collapsed native wildlife populations by as much as 99%, and they're even competing with the endangered Florida panther for the remaining prey. And they've done it all while remaining almost completely invisible. Only about 1% of Burmese pythons in the Everglades are ever seen or captured. For decades, Florida has tried everything: bounty programs, professional hunters, public competitions, scout snakes implanted with radio transmitters. They've removed more than 23,000 pythons since 2000, and the population has only grown. So now scientists are turning to a weapon that sounds like it was designed by a mad scientist: dead mice, laced with a lethal dose of common over-the-counter pain reliever, dropped from the sky by the millions. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to the 1970s. That's when Burmese pythons first arrived in Florida, shipped in as part of the booming exotic pet trade. These snakes are native to Southeast Asia, where they live in tropical marshlands and jungles. In their natural habitat, they have predators, diseases that keep them in check, and competition. Florida had none of that. What Florida did have was the Everglades, 734 square miles of warm, wet, densely vegetated wilderness, almost two-thirds the size of Rhode Island, and arguably the most significant breeding ground for wading birds in North America. For a Burmese python, it was paradise. Warm year-round, flooded with prey, and practically impossible for humans to navigate. The first documented python sighting in the wild came in 1979. Through the 1980s, sightings trickled in. Pet owners who hadn't realized their cute baby snake would grow to 15 feet and weigh more than they did started doing the unthinkable. They drove to the edge of the Everglades and let them go. But the event that turbocharged the invasion came on August 23, 1992. Hurricane Andrew. One of the most destructive hurricanes in American history tore through southern Florida with sustained winds of 165 miles per hour. Among the wreckage was a python breeding facility near Homestead. The storm demolished it, and roughly 900 Burmese pythons escaped into the surrounding wilderness. Now, scientists actually debate how much Andrew really contributed to the crisis. Ian Bertoshek, an environmental scientist with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, put it this way: if it was a multiple-choice question as to how did Burmese pythons get into the South Florida ecosystem, and A was escaped pet, B was intentionally released, and C was meteorological disturbances, I would circle D, all of the above. Ecologist Dan Simberloff at the University of Tennessee points out that when the population started growing in the 1990s, most of the sightings were 20 miles away from that destroyed facility. Leading python researcher Frank Mazzotti at the University of Florida agrees that the hurricane probably wasn't the sole cause, but it certainly didn't help. Dumping 900 breeding-age pythons into a swamp that already had a growing population was like pouring gasoline on a fire that was already spreading. By 2000, the breeding population was officially recognized. By 2006, researchers found the first python nests. And then came the study that changed everything. In 2012, the U.S. Geological Survey published findings that were genuinely horrifying. Since the late 1990s, raccoon populations in the Everglades had declined by 99.3%. Possums, down 98.9%. Bobcats, 87.5%. Marsh rabbits, cottontail rabbits, and foxes had effectively disappeared entirely. Vanished. The Burmese python had systematically eaten its way through the food web of one of America's most iconic ecosystems. And the pythons brought more than just their appetites. Researchers discovered that an Asian lungworm parasite called Railiatiella orientalis had hitchhiked into Florida inside the pythons. The lung of a python is much larger than that of native snake species, so the parasite doesn't kill its python host. But when it spreads to native snakes, and it has, now infecting snakes in roughly 35 Florida counties, it's devastating. Native snakes are dying from a parasite they were never supposed to encounter. So what do you do about 250,000 invisible snakes in an impenetrable swamp? Florida's first answer was manpower. The Patrick Program, Python Action Team Removing Invasive Constrictors, was established in 2017, putting professional hunters on contract. These contractors earn $13 an hour while driving the back roads, or $18 an hour if they're willing to wade into the swamp on foot. They get an additional $50 for the first 4 feet of snake and $25 for every foot after that. It's not glamorous work. These are people pulling graveyard shifts on mud roads in mosquito-infested darkness, scanning the brush with flashlights for a glimpse of patterned scales. Then there's the most recent Python Challenge, an annual public competition that brings in hunters from across the country. In the latest challenge, 934 participants from 30 states and Canada descended on the Everglades for 10 days and collectively removed a record 294 pythons. The winner was Taylor Stanberry, a 4'11" Florida woman who personally captured 60 Burmese pythons, some of them 3 times her size, and walked away with a $10,000 check. There's also the Scout Snake program, which sounds like something out of a spy thriller. Scientists surgically implant radio transmitters into male pythons and release them back into the wild. During breeding season, these scout snakes, like one named Dionysus or Dion, a roughly 12-foot male, lead researchers straight to reproductive females. Bertashek called Dion the MVP, most valuable python, after the snake led them to a record-breaking female. It's clever, it's effective on a small scale, but it's not enough. In 3 months during 2025, from May to July, the Patrick Program removed 1,022 pythons. In July alone, 748 were removed, more than the entire previous year's total. Those are record-breaking numbers, and they were driven in part by a new partnership between the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and a Miami-based luxury leather company called Inversa Leathers. Governor DeSantis announced the partnership in October 2025. Inversa's CEO Arav Chavda brought something the state couldn't easily provide: a financial incentive. Inversa pays hunters roughly 60% more than FWC did, and the roughly 50 hunters who previously contracted directly with the state now work through Inversa. The result has been a dramatic increase in removals, while simultaneously reducing FWC's administrative workload by 89%. DeSantis put it bluntly, "We've seen a lot of progress and a lot of pythons removed, but the simple point of the matter was at that pace it was not enough to get where you needed to go." And he's right. Because here's the brutal math. Even removing 1,000 pythons in 3 months barely dents a population of hundreds of thousands. Each female can lay 50 to 100 eggs at a time. The record-breaking python captured in 2022, an 18-foot, 215-pound female that had likely eaten an entire adult white-tailed deer for her last meal, had 122 eggs developing inside her. 122. That single snake could have produced more offspring than some python hunters remove in a career. The odds of eradicating an introduced reptile population once it has spread across a large area are, according to scientists, very low. The Burmese python now occupies more than 1,000 square miles of southern Florida. The chances of eliminating it completely are essentially zero with conventional methods. Which brings us to the mice. The science started not in Florida, but on Guam, a U.S. territory in the western Pacific that's been dealing with its own snake catastrophe since the 1940s. The brown tree snake arrived on Guam as a stowaway in military cargo after World War II. Within decades, it wiped out nearly every native bird species on the island. Guam became a cautionary tale in invasive species biology, and a preview of what could happen to Hawaii, which scientists now consider the next at-risk location for brown tree snake invasion. Researchers at the USDA's National Wildlife Research Center discovered something remarkable about snake physiology. Snakes lack a functional phenol-type glucuronidation enzyme. They're also missing acetylation activity. These aren't just obscure biochemical details, they mean that snakes cannot metabolize phenolic compounds the way mammals can. And acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, is a phenolic compound. In humans, acetaminophen soothes aches and reduces fevers. In snakes, it disrupts the oxygen-carrying ability of hemoglobin in their blood. Only about 80 milligrams, roughly a child's dose of Tylenol, is enough to kill an adult brown tree snake. Once ingested, it takes about 60 hours for the drug to do its work. The delivery system is ingeniously simple. Dead mice, thumb-sized, are packed with acetaminophen tablets and attached to small flotation devices, 2 pieces of cardboard connected by a 4-foot paper streamer. When dropped from helicopters, these devices catch in the upper branches of the jungle canopy, right where brown tree snakes hunt. The snakes find the mice, eat them, and die. On Guam, the results have been stunning. In precisely defined treatment areas, with results corrected for immigration and emigration, the combined effect of acetaminophen-laced mice showed a 0% survival rate for brown tree snakes. Across broader areas, modeling studies suggest the method can reduce snake activity by around 80% in treated zones. The program has been operating on Guam since around 2010, with a major airdrop of 2,000 mice in 2013. As researcher Haldre Rogers described it, "It's another arrow in our quiver. Unfortunately, we don't have the silver bullet for brown tree snakes yet." Now scientists are investigating whether this same approach can work on Burmese pythons in Florida. Research published through the USDA found that acetaminophen is indeed an effective toxicant in juvenile Burmese pythons. At doses of 20, 40, or 80 milligrams, mortality rates were 14.3, 85.7, and 100% respectively. The biology is clear. Burmese pythons are just as vulnerable to acetaminophen as their brown tree snake cousins. The challenges of scaling this to the Everglades are enormous. The Everglades is vastly larger than Guam, the ecosystem is more complex, and there are legitimate concerns. Animal rights groups have pushed back. PETA spokesperson Martin Mercero has argued that, for reptiles, death could take days or even weeks. No animal should be forced to endure cruel death. There are ecological questions too. Could non-target scavengers, raccoons, birds, other native species already devastated by the pythons, accidentally consume the laced mice? What happens if predator-prey dynamics shift too rapidly once python numbers start dropping? These aren't trivial objections. But the alternative, doing nothing or continuing to rely solely on human hunters to catch invisible snakes one at a time in a swamp the size of a small state, has its own devastating consequences. The Everglades ecosystem is collapsing in real time. The aerial delivery method does have advantages for a place like the Everglades. Ground access is extremely limited across huge portions of the ecosystem. Helicopter-based distribution can cover large, otherwise unreachable areas efficiently. It reduces human intrusion into sensitive habitats. And because the mice are designed to lodge in vegetation rather than fall to the ground, there's at least some degree of targeting built into the system. Mercury contamination adds another grim footnote to the story. Pythons have accumulated such high levels of mercury in their flesh that they're unsafe for human consumption. So even turning them into food isn't an option. Inverse's leather goods represent one of the few ways to extract economic value from removed snakes, which is part of why the partnership has been so effective at incentivizing hunters. Right now, the python crisis is being fought on every front simultaneously. Professional hunters patrol the backroads. Scout snakes betray their mates. Drone-mounted radio tracking is being tested to locate pythons from the air. Public challenges bring in hundreds of volunteers. A luxury leather company pays bounties. And in laboratories, scientists are refining the toxic mouse delivery system, studying dosages, designing deployment strategies, and running models. The record-breaking captures tell a story of their own. In 2023, Jake Wallery, just 22 years old, hauled a 19-foot, 125-pound Burmese python out of Big Cypress National Preserve, the longest ever documented in Florida. The previous record holder measured 18 feet 9 inches. Conservationist Mike Elfenbane, after catching a 198-pound python, said simply, "It was more than a snake, it was a monster. And these monsters are still breeding, still spreading, still eating." The state of Florida has invested $2 million in expanded removal programs. The most recent Python challenge shattered records. The Inversa partnership has tripled removal rates. And the toxic mouse program represents perhaps the most radical escalation yet. The idea that you can weaponize a common painkiller and deliver it via dead rodents dropped from the sky to fight an ecological catastrophe that humans created in the first place. Whether it will be enough is the question no one can answer yet. The Everglades has been transformed into a battleground where the tools of modern science, free market economics, and sheer human stubbornness are being thrown at a problem that may already be too large to solve. The pythons arrived because of human carelessness, they thrived because of human inaction, and now their fate, and the fate of one of the most important ecosystems in North America, depends on whether humans can outthink, outhunt, and out-innovate a creature that's been perfecting its survival strategy for 40 million years. The mice are coming. Laced with Tylenol, dangling from cardboard parachutes, drifting down into the canopy of a swamp that's become the front line of one of the strangest wars humanity has ever waged. It sounds absurd, it sounds desperate. It might be the best chance the Everglades has got.